Today we are trying a $350 whiskey. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and this is not actually a $350 whiskey. This is a sample of a $350 whiskey. This is the Midleton Very Rare, so let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, and I'll tell you why I've got a sample of it and not a full-size bottle. Well, recently enough I did a video where I talked about, in my opinion, what were some overpriced Irish whiskies, and one of the whiskies that was featured on that video was Midleton Very Rare. And one of my friends said, look, Midleton Very Rare, it is expensive, yes, but it is totally worth it. It's really nice, it's absolutely worth the price. Now, for me, I think it's not worth the price. Look, it's going to be a lovely whiskey. I know it's going to be a lovely whiskey, but for me, I think it's a bit too expensive. Here in Ireland, it's like €240 if you buy it from the distillery, €250 in some shops. I did a bit of research in America. Some shops are selling it like at $320, $330, and that's before you even add sales tax in America, which will bring it up to like $350 for this whiskey. So I think that is a bit too expensive. I think you can get other whiskies that are comparable for cheaper, and I think you can get other whiskies that are maybe a bit worse, but also far cheaper, so you can get maybe more of those whiskeys. So for me, while I acknowledge it's a great whiskey, I still think it was that kind of overpriced whiskey. But now let's get into the actual facts of the whiskey. This whiskey, Midleton Very Rare, has been around since like 1984, and it kind of honors the old Midleton Distillery and the new Midleton Distillery, hence the name Midleton Very Rare. Midleton is where they produce things like Jameson, Green Spot, Redbreast, Powers. It's all those kind of classic Irish whiskies. So it is like the mothership distillery, but this is their like premium blend. Essentially, it's their premium top range whiskey. It is coming in at 40%, and it is non-age statement. Now, it's non-age statement, but apparently the whiskey in it can vary depending on the year, between like 12 and 20 years old. It's all apparently like hand selected, so the master distiller, the master blender, will go into the warehouse and find casks of grain whiskey, find casks of single pot still Irish whiskey that suit the kind of profile they're looking for, and they will take those out. And I recently had an event with the Midleton Distillery, with the Irish Whiskey Society, and they kind of made us a 31-year-old version of Jameson, which would essentially be this product here, the Midleton Very Rare, and it was fantastic. There is something about Midleton spirit when it gets that bit of age on it, when it gets all those kind of rough edges knocked off the outside of it, and it just turns into this lovely, creamy, rich spirit. So even at 40%, it does deliver a lot of flavor. I did say it's a batch product, so different batches apparently like do have different flavors. Like the 2023 version apparently had like lots of bright tropical fruits. This one here, I'll get into it, apparently has like more apples and pears and more muted fruits. And there is a 2025 batch which on their website is listed as coming soon. I'll see if I put a picture of that up there. So this is like an annual batch product. When this whiskey was first designed, Barry Crockett, the master blender back then, the distiller back then, he said he wanted to make the whiskey the best whiskey possible, a whiskey that could be enjoyed by everyone and be really, really top-notch stuff. So I think that's what they were going for and what they're continuing to go for, because he's no longer the master distiller and master blender, but they do have a Barry Crockett legacy version of this whiskey, which is entirely single pot still, and it's coming in at 46% ABV, so it's that little bit better. But this one here is going to be a blend. It's undisclosed components, but it is going to be pot still whiskey and grain whiskey. There's no malt whiskey in here at all, so it's just kind of I'd say lots of grain and lots of pot still, just to give it a nice rounded rich profile. But that's about enough on the talking about this whiskey. Let's get into the nose on the Midleton Very Rare 2024 edition. Cheers. Oh, it is lovely on the nose. Like it's creamy, but with lots of like toffee, butterscotch, like really like vanilla caramel, vanilla toffee, vanilla butterscotch, like brown sugar. I wouldn't say it's like fudgy on the nose. I wouldn't say it's that kind of like crystallized sugar. It's more like that deep caramelized brown sugar with a lot of vanilla creaminess backing up. Kind of like reminds me like of a creme brulee with that really rich vanilla custard underneath and that melted caramelized brown sugar up top. I wouldn't, maybe somewhere between like a green apple and a red apple. Think of like a really crisp red apple. That's the kind of like appley orchard fruit notes here. I wouldn't say it's like stewed or cooked down. I'd say it's like in that fresh, vibrant, bright, really just, yeah, really nice and appley, really nice and fresh. And a bit of crisp notes there. There are like baking spices. I wouldn't say there's like pot still spices. For me, pot still, especially Midleton pot still, always has this like peppery, almost like cracked black pepper. But here, I think with that grain whiskey, it's softened down. It's almost like it's like cinnamon hard candies. That kind of like cinnamon with sugar, the baking spices with sugar. Like there's a bit of clove, kind of like clove rock, that kind of like sweetness mixed with the spicy notes coming through. There's not a huge amount of oak spice. Like, you can tell it's a nice whiskey. You can tell it spent a lot of time in oak, but on the nose at least, there's not this big punch of oak coming through. But yeah, it's just got this really nice, rich caramel, vanilla, pudding, that kind of really nice custardy note on the nose. So let's go in for the palate and see if it's just as good. Cheers. If ever there was a whiskey you would call smooth, this is it. Like that word smooth is used a lot when people are talking about a whiskey, when it's not rough, it's not sharp, it's not spiky, it does not burn you, and they say it's smooth. But this here is smooth. It is rich. Like I said, all those kind of rough edges have been knocked off it, but it's got a really nice creamy, like I said, that kind of, again, that from the nose, that same kind of custardy, vanilla, creme brulee, that brown sugar, that caramel, that comes through. Still plenty of orchard fruit, still that nice bit of brightness. Like you got this nice wrapper of creaminess, bit of bright like apples, bit of bright like those crispy red apples there coming through, and a bit of spice as I was swallowing it. So I'm going to go in for a second sip, see if I can get more of those spices. Cheers. The mouthfeel on this, it is light. I won't say it's like super heavy. It's not like, there is a bit of creaminess, there is a bit of oiliness that you'd expect from a pot still, but it is on the lighter side. Like it is at 40%, so there is, you know, a fair amount of water in here, but it's not really lacking in flavor. Like it's light, it spreads across your palate, it doesn't like stick to your palate, but there is a lot of flavor. Like I said, that spicy note, that does build up a bit on the second sip. I'm getting a little bit of oak, that's more into the finish now, but like there was a bit more spice in the second sip. Again, with those brighter, crisp, almost like not sharp apple, but like that crisp apple note coming through. And again, just all wrapped up in that really sweet vanilla, caramel, creme brulee kind of note. So I'm gonna go in again this time, but focus on that finish, focus on that little bit of an oaky note I was getting. Cheers. Okay, so again, up front, big burst, sweetness, caramel, toffee, butterscotch. They get the apples, the pears. As I swallowed it, because again, the mouthfeel on it is quite light, so as I swallow it, I can then take a breath and I get that little bit of oak. Not spicy oak, more like that oak tannins, like the character of the oak, not that char, but just the character of the oak coming through. Yeah, got a really nice, just a really nice kind of flavor to it, really nice. Like the finish, it's not super long, but it's also not as short as I might have expected from some, like from a 40% whiskey. Some 40%ers, they just kind of go and they fall off right away. Like I'm still tasting it here, still getting a little bit of that fruitiness. The fruitiness actually has gone a little bit more like stone fruit, like apricots, that kind of like stone fruit flavor here. But yeah, it's definitely light, but it's light but long on the finish. Like that's kind of where I put it. Like it's not a huge flavor that you're going to keep on tasting, but it's also not the kind of flavor that just disappears. Like it's kind of somewhere there where it's lighter, but it does linger a bit. Before I give my final thoughts on this whiskey, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews like this every Wednesday, and I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey every Friday. So if you want to see those, make sure you come back, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a message in the comments below to say what kind of whiskies you think I should review in the future. But now, my final thoughts on this whiskey. It's lovely. I still think it's overpriced. Like, don't get me wrong, this is a really nice, really well made whiskey. Like Midleton call it the pinnacle of Irish whiskey, and I can see why they say that. Like it is a really lovely whiskey. I just think for €240 from the distillery, like no middlemen in there, €240 I think is a bit too much. And especially if you're in America or you're watching this anywhere outside of Ireland, where the price might be like $350 or something like that, I think you can get better Irish whiskies for cheaper than that and at higher proof. Now, proof isn't everything. alcohol content isn't everything, but I think this here, with a bit more weight behind it, would be a better whiskey. Like, this is the kind of whiskey you could pour yourself a glass of, really enjoy it, pour yourself another glass of, and then find yourself going through an entire bottle in one night because it is so easy to drink. It's so nice. It's the kind of inviting whiskey that makes you want to come back to it, makes you want to go back to the nose and see what else you can find, see if you can find extra flavors in it. The problem is, if you went through an entire bottle in one night, that would be a very expensive night. So it's just, for me, lovely whiskey, bit of a treat if you maybe are buying something for someone as a present and you know something about them, like they like whiskey, they might like this as a present, as like a special occasion whiskey, but I don't think it's anywhere near what you might call like an everyday drinker or anything like that. So for me, just the kind of whiskey, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm definitely going to keep on enjoying this little sample because I probably won't have any more Midleton Very Rare for a while, but I'm going to keep on enjoying this, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.